Guys, they did it. They got all the hot young actors in one movie. And we got one more, so just saying. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today our movie in the middle is Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 is the second installment in the adaptation of the epic sci-fi novel, this time following Paul Atreides as he grapples with his role as a leader in the midst of the war for Arrakis. It stars Timothee Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgard, Dave Bautista, Florence, Pugh, Seydoux, Austin Butler, and Christopher Walken. So as you know, this was my second most anticipated movie of the year because the first one just blew me away, mostly in its visuals, but also just its great storytelling, the world building, everything about it. And I knew this one was going to be probably even more insane in terms of its world building and in terms of the action that comes with it. I knew it was probably going to be less setup-y and, less slow-paced, more we're getting right to it. And that is exactly what it is. Starting off with the highs, of course, the cinematography once again. Greig Fraser has become one of the best cinematographers ever in just his last few movies alone. Dune, Dune Part 2, and The Batman. Unreal. I mean, this cinematography makes me want to be a better person. I'm not kidding. From the first frame, I was like, this is gonna be amazing. Just the color, the lighting, it's just some of the things that he does. I have no idea how it's possible, and it's so good. And it just looks, once again, so epic. And of course, because it takes place mostly in the desert this time, that makes for an even better movie of cinematography because desert always translates to really, really great visuals. This was kind of like the Lawrence of Arabia of sci-fi movies. And like I said, there is so much more action in this one. The first one was very set up, a lot of world building and a lot of introducing us to the characters in this war, and it was very slow paced. There were obviously moments of action, but not like this one. This one gets into the war, and every single scene of action is just so cool because nowadays every time we get like a sci-fi fight, it's always a lot of lasers and a lot of, running and it can be very confusing and chaotic, and it just kind of looks generic, But in this one, I was genuinely excited for the action, and when the big battles start happening, I was like, this is gonna be so good because they really show you all the tactics that they do. They show you, how living on Arrakis, the Fremen actually can fight better because they're more adapted to that planet and because they have all of these different battle strategies, and it was just so cool to see. Plus, the way the action is filmed is also, once again, just monumental and feels visceral, like you're really there. You have to watch these movies in IMAX or Dolby. There's just no other way. You're not going to get the same experience as if you were watching it at home on your TV. I mean, it'll definitely be incredible, but, the worm riding scene in this movie, it is just insane. It is loud, it is overbearing, and it really feels like you are on this sandworm with him, like how much of a struggle that would be. But in this one, the story and the acting, I think, goes even harder and is even better. It definitely takes that step up because it deals with some really, really interesting things regarding a very simple premise. The story this time around is really cool because it's not just setting up, okay, there's these bad people, there's these good people, they're looking for the spice, and he's thrown right in the middle, and that's about it. It's pretty much it. That is honestly kind of the story for this entire book. It's very simple. It's just complexities of the politics, the economics, the world building that goes into it. But this one introduces another element that I didn't expect to happen and is very, very well done, and I think it could have ruined the movie if it wasn't as well done. And that is this idea of Paul being basically the Messiah, or as they call it, the Lisan al-Gaib. I don't think I pronounced that right, but there's 17 different words for it. I don't remember any of them, and I can barely pronounce most of them. Paul being Jesus. That's the point of the movie, is Paul Jesus or not? And it is really, really well done because they constantly hit you with both sides of the prophecy is being foretold and it happens exactly as it's supposed to be, so he must be. And then the other side being like, well, yeah, but if you force it this way or you do certain things to make it so it happens, is it really happening as it's supposed to? But then again, does it matter how it happens? If it happens and it all is happening one after the other, maybe that's how it was supposed to be anyway, and yet the prophecy is still foretold. So it's really interesting because it really brings to the forefront this idea of faith, and should you, be having faith and not questioning things. If you do question it, are you, like a bad person? It brings this idea of, is there ever actually a prophecy, or just people making things into a prophecy and then making those things happen to prove to you that, yes, there is a God. And it's really interesting going back and forth, especially when it comes to Paul, because he has to sort of make this decision. And he's sort of forced into one way or the other, and kind of leads him to where he gets to at the end. And it makes for some incredible sequences, especially in the acting from Timothee Chalamet. He really goes for it. He is genuinely just such a good actor. And in this one, I loved how he really steps up, because Paul is one that so far we've just seen sort of from the outside. We haven't really seen a lot of his stances on things. We just know that he's fighting for the good. But we haven't really seen a lot of his perspectives on what he thinks about a lot of this. He's just being thrown into it. And so it's really cool to finally see him take some action, make some decisions, and see where he goes with it. And especially because he has to carry this whole movie, Timothée Chalamet, and Paul has to carry this army. It is cool to see this guy who honestly doesn't feel like or look like, he should be up to much or in the middle of all this, and kind of lead all these people. And with that being said, all the other acting was, of course, incredible. Stellan Skarsgard as, the Baron Harkonnen, freaks me out once again. He is so freaking scary, and it's just unsettling. Austin Butler is in this movie. He was just kind of made for this role because, once again, he gets to disguise his voice. I don't think that man's going to ever understand what his own voice sounds like for the rest of his life. As good-looking of a guy as he is, he looks so off-putting and creepy in this movie. He was so good. And once again, just his career trajectory is just wild. Javier Bardem has become the meme for this movie because he's the one who believes in the Messiah the most. And so it's like every time anything happens, he's like, Lisa Nagabe. Oh my god, this is it. And it's become the funniest thing. He was really good as being both very serious, but also kind of the comedic relief of this movie. And then, of course, Zendaya was amazing, as she always is in this movie, and we actually finally got to see more of her than we did in the last one. And she was great because she was kind of the opposite of Javier Bardem's character, where she's the one who's more on the grounded side of things, saying that the prophecy isn't real and it's all made up. And she is the one who's kind of trying to keep Timothée Chalamet's character from going off the deep end, and it's really kind of heartbreaking to see the conflict that comes between them as the movie progresses. And there's a couple people who, kind of like Zendaya and Javier Bardem in the first one, are in this movie, but we thought they were going to be in it more, so I'm excited to see them come back even probably more in the next one. Specifically, Florence Pugh and Léa Seydoux. They were both very, very good, as they always are, but we didn't get to see a whole lot of them. Really, any middles or lows that I would have, mostly probably middles, are because they're things that I either didn't quite understand or would probably need to see on again on a second viewing. And for now, I'm pretty much going to give them all middles, just because, again, I might not have just completely understood it, or it's something that it is in the book, and they're very faithful to the book, so the movie can't really be faulted for it necessarily, kind of like Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The first was just sort of like a geographical thing. I was getting really confused. They were kind of going back and forth from north to south Arrakis, and there were kind of different hubs that were in each of them, and I got a little bit confused here and there. They kind of skipped traveling, which is like something you're supposed to do. You're not necessarily supposed to show everybody traveling everywhere all the time. A lot of it's implied, but it was a little bit confusing here and there. I'm sure on a second time around it'll be cleared up. One of the other ones is that this one honestly feels, weirdly enough, like the first one was very slow. This one feels very fast, and that's good in a lot of ways. But in some, I just felt like, okay, you're going very, very detailed into this war. I don't know, maybe war is just, especially in something like this, it's not as complex as I'm thinking it's supposed to be. But it did feel like it went sometimes too fast. Like, they have the upper hand, then they have the upper hand. And it's like, we're going back and forth, which is fine. That's what war is. But it feels like it was happening very quickly. It just kind of felt like to me like they might have been skipping over stuff, and they probably weren't, but it just felt like that. And this also applies to, they introduce a lot of things or a lot of people that then not necessarily don't go anywhere, but it's like, wow, there was this whole buildup, and then that subplot is kind of closed out very quickly, or this character is gone very quickly. And I don't know, I kind of expected it to go more into the next one. Weirdly enough, it did give me slightly Last Jedi vibes. I'm not saying it was like Last Jedi. I'm just saying it gave me the vibes in the way that it would bring some stuff up and then it was just kind of dealt with very quickly. So overall, Dune Part 2 is once again a masterpiece from Denis Villeneuve and from Greig Fraser and everybody who works on these movies. The story is really, really cool, goes in depth with this whole Messiah complex and, you know, trying to figure out everything about that. Obviously, the cinematography is like a gift to the world. Maybe Greig Fraser's the Messiah and Denis Villeneuve. I don't know. And it does really bump up the action compared to the first one, and this one has so much more. Honestly, by the end of the movie, it was 2 hours and 45 minutes. By the end of the movie, I wanted more. It for that long of a time, it went really fast. And I'm sure just on a second time around, now that I kind of know where it's heading, some things will probably clear up along the way. I'm just so excited for this third one that they inherently have to make, especially from where it ended. It's going to lead to a lot of incredible scenes and a lot of great acting. I'm going to give Dune Part 2 a 3.5 out of 4. Well, guys, let me know what you thought of Dune Part 2. Do you like it better than the first one? Do you like this one as a bit more action, or do you like the steady world building of the first one a little bit more? And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.